Hi, everyone. This is Global Podcast, your window to the world. Breaking news, big ideas, your global hangout for what's happening now, and bold conversations. Wherever you are, we're bringing it to you. Let's get started.
Okay, so, we've got a really fascinating set of articles and reports to dig into today. And, when you sort of stack them up next to each other, they paint this picture of some pretty big changes that might be coming up, globally for everyone. It's like we've been given these little glimpses of the future from a bunch of different angles.
Right.
And it's our job to try and put the pieces together and see, what that future might actually look like for people like you listening.
Absolutely. And I think what struck me about this particular set of sources is the way they kind of connect seemingly random things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got Elon Musk talking about artificial intelligence and jobs. You've got the EU telling its citizens to prepare for something big.
Yeah.
And then you have all the stuff happening with Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
They all seem separate at first.
Yeah.
But they all point to this period of huge uncertainty and potential upheaval.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to do in this deep dive today. We're going to really unpack these issues. What's the future of work going to look like with AI getting so sophisticated?
Right.
Are we really heading towards some kind of global conflict?
Yeah.
And what about Russia and Ukraine? What's the latest there? And what does it mean for the rest of us? So think of this deep dive as your shortcut to understanding the really important stuff
Absolutely
about these global trends.
A crash course
in
the biggest stuff happening right now.
Exactly. So why don't we start with this whole artificial intelligence and the future of jobs conversation?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Let's unpack this first piece of our potential future.
Okay, so Elon Musk, right? Never one to shy away from a bold statement.
Right.
He recently said at this big tech conference, Viva Tech, that in the future, probably none of us will have a job.
Whoa.
That's a pretty big prediction to just throw out there.
Yeah, that is a pretty sweeping statement to make.
Right.
His thinking is that AI and robots are going to become so advanced that they'll be able to do almost every job better than a human could.
Wow.
He even said human jobs might become optional, more like hobbies, things people do for fun, not because they need to make a living.
Yeah. Which brings us to this other idea he brought up, universal high income.
Right.
If traditional jobs just disappear, what happens?
Yeah.
That's where this idea comes in.
It's a fascinating concept.
It's pretty big, for society as a whole.
It really is. It makes you wonder how societies might change how they see value. And contribution. I mean, historically, work has always been central to who we are.
Yeah.
How we fit into society.
Right.
But if work becomes optional, what? Then what gives our lives meaning and purpose?
Yeah, what do we do all day?
Right. And how do we avoid the potential problems that come with such a massive change?
Yeah. And Musk even wondered if maybe humans would end up giving AI its purpose.
Whoa.
That's a really wild thought, right?
It is mind-blowing.
We create these super intelligent machines, and then they need us to tell them what to do.
Yeah, to give them meaning.
Crazy.
It is a very thought-provoking idea.
It is, but with most things about the future, there's another side to this story.
Sure.
Researchers at MIT, they're saying that this whole AI takeover of jobs is happening a lot slower than people think.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, they're saying it's mostly about economics.
Okay.
Some jobs can be automated, but for a lot of companies, it's just too expensive to do it right now.
I see.
The technology's there, but it doesn't make financial sense yet.
So it's not just about what AI can do.
Right.
It's about whether it's actually worth it for businesses to implement it.
Exactly. And they point out that AI still struggles with things like flexibility and adaptability. Those are things humans are still much better at.
Makes sense.
And then there's the cost of actually putting these AI systems in place, integrating them with existing systems.
Right. It's not just plug and play.
Yeah, it can be a huge headache.
So those are pretty big barriers.
They are, and it is a little reassuring, because they're saying jobs that need real human connection, like therapists, artists, teachers, those are less likely to be automated because there's something about those jobs that you just can't replicate with a machine.
The human touch.
Right.
The empathy and the understanding that comes from, real life experience.
Yeah.
It's hard to program that into an AI.
Exactly. And Musk actually touched on another interesting thing about AI. He warned parents about this thing he called dopamine maximizing AI.
Okay.
It's not just about jobs, you know?
Right. Yeah.
He's worried AI could change the way we think and how long we can pay attention to things.
Oh, wow.
Especially kids.
Yeah, that's scary.
He's talking about these algorithms that are designed to keep you hooked by constantly feeding you stimulating content.
Right, like social media.
Exactly. And that triggers dopamine release in your brain.
Which makes you feel good.
Right.
But Musk is worried that if you're exposed to this stuff for too long,
Especially as a kid.
yeah, your attention span could really suffer.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it could affect your decision-making, too.
Wow. So it's like it's another level of AI's potential impact.
Exactly. It's not just about our jobs.
Right.
It's about how we think and feel.
Yeah. It could change who we are as people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you think about all this, Musk's vision of a future without jobs, the MIT research saying it might not happen so fast, and then Musk's warning about social media and kids, does it all feel more like a utopia or a dystopia?
That's the big question.
It is, and regardless of what you think, what does it mean for us right now?
Right.
What skills do we need to be learning? How is work going to change?
Huge questions for all of us.
Yeah, a lot to think about, for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit.
Let's talk about this growing concern around global conflict. We've seen reports that the European Union has actually issued warnings to its citizens, like all 450 million of them,
Wow.
to prepare for what they're calling a World War-like situation.
That's pretty serious.
It is that's some strong language coming from a major international organization. And it seems like they're not just talking.
Right.
They've urged citizens in all 27 EU countries to start stockpiling essential supplies.
Like what kind of supplies?
Food, water, medicine, things like that.
Okay.
Enough to last at least 72 hours.
Wow.
Now, you know, people always say to be prepared for emergencies.
Not like natural disasters.
Yeah, but the way they're talking, it sounds like they're worried about something much bigger. Like a major conflict that could disrupt everything, right?
Makes you think.
And this comes right after some other pretty serious statements from NATO's Secretary General.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mark Rutte. He warned that Russia could be ready to launch another attack in Europe.
Another one.
Yeah, as early as 2030.
Wow, that's soon.
It is. And he said that NATO is ready to defend any member country that gets attacked.
Okay.
He said the response would be strong and unified from the entire alliance.
So they're taking this very seriously.
They are, and so is the EU. They've actually started promoting this whole preparedness strategy.
Yeah.
They're recommending that every household have a 3-day survival kit ready to go.
Wow.
They even have a list of recommended items.
Like what?
Matches waterproof ID, bottled water, energy bars, a flashlight. You know, basic stuff.
Okay.
Just in case things go really bad.
Got it.
It's a big deal for a government to be giving this kind of advice to its citizens.
Yeah, it's not something you see every day.
And some Scandinavian countries have done similar things.
Really?
Yeah, they've actually distributed war survival guides to their people.
Wow.
And the EU even mentioned a report from Finland's former president about how important it is for Europe to be prepared.
Interesting.
And, you know, the EU Crisis Management Commissioner, Haja Labib, she said something really important.
What's that?
She said, knowing what to do in a crisis, and even just thinking about different scenarios, can actually help prevent panic if something bad does happen.
That makes sense.
It's about being resilient, not being caught completely off guard.
So it's not just about physical preparation.
Right.
It's also about mental preparedness.
Exactly. So for all of you listening, this isn't just some abstract geopolitical discussion.
Right.
These are real warnings and practical steps that leaders in Europe are advising. It really shows how concerned they are about things escalating.
Yeah, and it makes you think.
It does.
How should people be interpreting these warnings?
Yeah. Is it time to freak out? Or is it more about being prepared for a world that's becoming increasingly complex and unpredictable?
Right. It's a question we all need to consider.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the situation with Russia and Ukraine.
Okay.
It's really complicated and it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
Recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said something pretty direct and personal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said he believes Vladimir Putin will die soon.
Wow.
And that when that happens, the war will finally end.
That's a pretty strong prediction.
It is, and it's quite personal, too. Zelensky said he thinks it'll happen because of instability inside Russia.
Okay.
and because of Putin's age.
Right. He is getting up there.
Yeah, he's 72.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Zelensky didn't go into detail about why he thinks Putin will die soon,
Right.
but it definitely shows his view of what's going to happen in Russia and how the conflict might end.
Interesting.
He also said something pretty pointed to the West. He said they should close the question of Putin
What does that mean?
before Putin's historically unremarkable and safe life ends.
Wow. That's a pretty harsh statement.
It is, and he's still pushing for Western countries to increase sanctions and pressure on Russia. He thinks that could destabilize Russian society,
Okay.
and that Putin's biggest fears are losing power
Right.
and being isolated on the world stage.
It's a power play.
It is, but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even with all this strong rhetoric, Zelensky said he's still open to negotiating with Putin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if it's the only way to stop the fighting and save lives.
Makes sense.
He just made it clear that he wouldn't be very nice to Putin
Right.
if they did meet.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So he's leaving the door open for diplomacy,
He is.
but he's not going to make it easy for Putin.
Exactly. Now, Donald Trump actually weighed in on Zelensky's comments.
Oh, what did he say?
He was pretty critical.
Really?
Yeah, he said Zelensky should be focusing on making peace,
Oh.
not talking about Putin like that.
Interesting.
He even accused Zelensky of just wanting to fight.
Like, he doesn't want to negotiate.
Yeah, but here's the interesting part.
Mm-mm.
Trump also said he thinks Russia has been stalling on negotiations.
Oh, wow.
He even compared it to his own business dealings.
Right, he's a negotiator.
Exactly. So even though he criticized Zelensky,
Mm-hmm.
he also admitted that Russia might not be playing fair.
It shows how complicated this whole thing is.
It does. Everyone has a different opinion on the best way to resolve this conflict.
Yeah, and whose fault it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about something else that happened.
Okay.
Russia made a statement about its plans
Mm-hmm.
for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
That's the big one in Europe, right?
Yeah, it's the largest one.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia is saying it considers the plant to be part of Russia.
After that referendum they held?
Yeah, which most of the world didn't recognize.
Right.
Obviously, Ukraine doesn't agree.
Mm-hmm.
They still say it's their power plant.
So you've got this huge nuclear facility
Right.
stuck in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah, and both sides are claiming it as their own.
That's really dangerous.
It is one wrong move. Could have disastrous consequences.
You know, the sources also mentioned something about the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
being interested in energy infrastructure in the region,
Mm-hmm.
possibly connected to some kind of minerals deal with Ukraine.
Right.
So you've got these economic and strategic interests
Mm-hmm.
mixed in with this already incredibly tense situation.
It's a mess.
It really is.
And to give you a bit more context,
Okay.
the U.S. intelligence community recently put out a report,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that Russia is still considered an enduring threat.
Okay.
The director of national intelligence even called Russia a formidable competitor.
But not an adversary.
That's right. They didn't
Yes.
use that word.
Interesting.
It shows how complex the relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely tension and competition,
Right.
but maybe they're trying to keep things from getting even worse.
Maybe they don't want to completely shut down communication.
Exactly. And finally, there's some news on the diplomatic front.
Okay.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, announced that Putin is planning to visit India soon.
It'll be his first trip there since the war started.
Exactly, since 2022.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't set any dates yet.
Okay.
But Lavrov pointed out that India's prime minister
Mm-hmm.
made Russia his first foreign stop after he was reelected.
Right.
So Lavrov is saying now it's Putin's turn to visit.
Like a diplomatic exchange.
Yeah, and it's interesting because India's Prime Minister Modi
Mm.
is one of the few leaders who's visited both Moscow and Kyiv this year.
Wow.
And he also went to that BRICS summit in Russia back in October.
Right.
So India is in this really delicate position,
Mm-hmm.
trying to stay neutral in this global conflict.
Right.
And they might even be trying to act as a mediator.
Makes sense. They have good relationships with both sides.
They do. So when you consider all this,
Mm.
Zelensky's predictions about Putin,
Right.
the ongoing war and the nuclear power plant,
Mm-hmm.
what the U.S. intelligence is saying about Russia,
Right.
and Russia cozying up to India,
Yep.
what do you think it all means for the future?
It's a big tangled web.
It is, and it shows that this war in Ukraine isn't just a regional conflict.
Right.
It affects everyone.
Yeah, it has global implications.
Energy security, international alliances, the balance of power, it's all changing.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap things up,
Okay.
we've covered a lot today.
We have.
The future of work with AI getting so advanced,
Mm-hmm.
the growing worries about global conflict,
Yeah.
and all the complex stuff happening with Russia and Ukraine, and how it affects the rest of the world.
Right.
Now, these might seem like separate issues,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all connected.
They are. They all paint this picture of a world
Right.
that's facing some huge potential changes.
Exactly. Changes in technology, society, and geopolitics.
Right. It's a lot to take in.
It is, and it leaves us with something to really think about.
Mm-hmm.
How are these trends going to shape our world?
Yeah.
The rise of AI, the threat of global conflict, the shifting alliances between countries.
It's all interconnected.
It is, and how should we be preparing for these changes?
As individuals and as societies.
That's the big question.
It is food for thought, for sure.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
It's been a fascinating conversation,
It has.
and we'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.
All right, take care.
You too.